right, so round of applause for Dave King.
Thanks, guys. Let's see, how's the audio here? Can you guys hear me okay? Is it better to use this than to not use it at all? Yeah, okay. All right, so we'll use this. All right, so for those of you that don't know, my name is Dave King, founder and CEO of a company called Exaptive. I'm a relatively new transplant here to Oklahoma City. I moved here about 1.5 years ago when my wife Deone got a great job opportunity at OU. And I've loved being here. I've been really excited to grow my company here. I've been really excited to get connected to this entrepreneurial community. And I was really excited when I was invited to give this presentation for the relaunch of 1 Million Cups Oklahoma City. And part of that was because I think that the philosophy and the mission behind 1 Million Cups is actually very similar to the philosophy and the mission that has driven me as an entrepreneur and driven me to start Exaptive. And I'll tell you why I say that. You know, I think what the Kauffman Foundation has done with 1 Million Cups, they've created this space where entrepreneurs can come together, they can get help, they can get support, they can get coffee, obviously. But I think, you know, more fundamentally, the idea is that they can get ideas. They can get new perspectives that might help them see their own ventures or their own challenges in new light, and that they can get some insight. And that's the piece that's really important to me, because this idea of generating an environment that's about ideas, this is what has really driven me personally and professionally, and this is the motivation behind my work as an entrepreneur and the motivation behind Exaptive as a company. You know, the Kauffman Foundation is trying to help people have good ideas by creating a physical environment where people can come together around coffee and conversation. With Exaptive, we're trying to create a virtual environment where people can come together around data and data science. But the idea is fundamentally the same. How do we create an environment that facilitates idea generation? Now, if you're going to try and facilitate insight, I think it's important that you have some sort of working model for how insight happens, right? What is this light bulb moment? And years ago, when I was researching this before I'd started the company, I came across an article by Stephen Jay Gould in 1982. So he wrote an article in 1982. That's him. He's an evolutionary biologist. And the article was called Exaptation, the Need for a New Word in Science. You're probably starting to see where my company name comes from. So he said, you know, in evolutionary biology, everyone's excited about adaptation, something getting better and better for a particular cause. He said, but if you look at enough evolutionary phenomena, you see that there's this other thing that happens that they didn't have a word for. So he proposed exaptation. It's when something that originally evolved, some trait that originally evolved because of one set of survival advantages, gets serendipitously co-opted for something completely different and thrives there. So the quintessential example is birds' feathers. It turns out that feathers originally evolved because they kept animals warm. They trapped a lot of air. Air is a good insulator. So it was sort of like a version of fur. And if you're an animal that is literally wearing a down coat that traps a lot of air and a predator chases you off a cliff, instead of plummeting down and dying, you might flutter down and survive. And if you survive, you get to procreate, and many generations later, in a simplified explanation of evolution, your offspring get to fly off that cliff instead of flutter off that cliff. So flight is this sort of serendipitous exaptation from warmth. And as I learned about this, I became convinced that this wasn't just a biological model, that this was also a cognitive model, that a lot of these light bulb moments that we talk about in innovation are really mental exaptations. They're when we take something that we thought only applied in one particular area, and we realize that it can be applied in a completely different way. So that you don't think I'm just making all this up, I'm going to give you some real examples. So most people know that Gutenberg invented the printing press. Not everybody knows that Gutenberg went to a vineyard before he did so, and he saw a wine press. This is an early screw wine press, squishes the grapes. And if you look at the early Gutenberg press, it's mechanically almost identical to the wine press. He exapted that idea over from making wine to making books. Let me give you a more modern day technical example. So all of these squiggly lines are fish, how fish swim. These are the patterns of zebrafish, type of fish people like to study. The upper left-hand corner, that is a healthy zebrafish. And all of the other lines are zebrafish on different drugs. So that's your zebrafish on drugs. This, by the way, this is nicotine, which makes me never look at a cigarette the same way, right? The researcher that was studying this, his name was Jonathan Cachet, and he had a question. His question was, can a computer look at the way a zebrafish is swimming and figure out what drug it's on? I've learned it's best not to ask why scientists ask the question they do, questions they do, but this was important to him. So he wanted to see if he could figure that out. It turned out to be a really hard problem. And he was stumped on it for a while, and then he lucked into finding a group in Switzerland that was using computer algorithms to look at how storms move. This is something that I know is very important in Oklahoma City. Look at how storms move and figure out something about the storm. And he was able to exapt those algorithms into his line of work and use the same approaches to look at how fish move and figure out something about the fish. So these are ideas, new innovations, mental exaptations. They're also great stories, but I think they have a fatal flaw. And that flaw is that they rely on serendipity. And serendipity makes for great stories, but in my opinion, in terms of moving society forward through innovation, serendipity is highly overrated. If Gutenberg hadn't gone to a vineyard, would we have been willing to wait an extra few years for printed books? That would have been a shame. So the question then is, can we create an environment that tries to stack the odds in favor of these sorts of mental exaptations? And that's what we've been doing with my company, Exaptive. So we've created a web-based virtual environment that tries to lower the barriers for having these sorts of mental exaptations. And part of the way we've done that is by taking this extremely modular approach to data analytics. And the reason modularity is so important is that I increasingly believe that when we talk about new ideas, we're not really talking about a new idea. What we're usually talking about is a new combination of existing ideas. So this idea of combinatory play is very, very important. And we wanted to make it easy to have that sort of combinatory play when it comes to data analysis. And data analysis sounds technical, but data analysis is now something that is being applied in every field imaginable, not just the scientific ones. So what we've done is created this environment. Over on the right, there's these building blocks. And a user can pull those building blocks into this area on the left and wire them together, as you'll see in just a moment. One of the keys is they don't have to be a programmer to be able to do this. They can connect these building blocks. In this case, we've got a database that accesses medical data called PubMed. We're connecting it to a word cloud. And what Exaptive does is on the right, it immediately builds an interactive web page that now queries that medical database, shows the results in a word cloud. So as they connect these things together on the left, they get this web application on the right. If they want to experiment with a new technique, like a network diagram, they can just drop that component in. They can wire it up to the data. They can add another wire that makes this word cloud interactive. And now they can come over. Again, it's immediately available. They click on a word in the word cloud. They get new data, and now they get to see it in a different way. So the goal behind my company is to create this environment that makes it really easy to play with these different modules, whether they're data sets, algorithms, or visualizations, combine them in new ways to hopefully generate some new ideas. Now, there's some real benefits in being able to do this. And one of them is that, here's an example of one of them. So there's a technology that's very popular right now that's called WebGL. WebGL is a way to expose all of the graphics processing power of video games, all of that 3D graphics in the web browser. And I've got a member on my team, Mark Whistler, who's a very skilled WebGL programmer, and he created a set of Exaptive components that you can see can do these really cool 3D powerful visualizations. Now, WebGL typically stays in the domain of 3D, modeling, video games, things like this. But we were working with a biotech company in Boston that had not 3D data, but they had very complex 2D data. They had built these interconnected networks that were disease models, models about how particular diseases work. And these things got so complex that they found that scientists could not interact with them in the browser with any reasonable performance. So what we did is we used our system, we took that WebGL component, and we exapted it over to this other use case. And we bound it not to three-dimensional data, but this two-dimensional data set. And now we could do the same sort of zoom in and zoom out that you can do in WebGL. We can do that now on these models. And we can interact with these things very, very easily. And this is something that now a number of scientists at a number of organizations are using today to look at a variety of diseases in some cutting-edge ways. So this is a tangible example of the benefit of being able to have this modularity. But going back to innovation, just because you can take one thing and apply it somewhere else doesn't mean that you'll necessarily know to do so, right? This still sort of suffers from the serendipity problem. And we don't want to create at Exaptive a system that just makes it possible to exchange components. We want to create a system that makes it probable that you'll exchange components in ways that lead to meaningful innovation. And that's the piece I'm sort of the most excited about that we're developing right now. It's something we call the cognitive network. So the fact that we have this system that knows how people are connecting things together means that we can do something interesting with the usage data. So I've clicked on that component, which was the medical database component. And now you can see the other types of components that frequently get used with that medical database. That might be algorithmic components, visualization components, data sets. And most importantly, you can see who is doing that connecting. And this is an important point. We have a lot of sort of technological systems nowadays that connect people together around things they have in common. We tend to call those things social networks. We don't call this a social network because it's not about being social. We don't really care about sharing pictures or videos or tweets. In this case, what we care about is coming together to share ideas that can help other people think about things in new ways. And that's why we call it the cognitive network. And I think this is important. We've created a lot of social networks in the world right now. I don't think we need more social networks, but I think we really need to use our technology to create a lot more cognitive networks. And that's really embodied in this picture. You don't know when you're solving a problem necessarily who is going to have that missing puzzle piece that's going to help you unlock whatever you've been stuck on. And frequently, that missing puzzle piece comes from somewhere you didn't expect. It involves some sort of mental acceptation. So I started this presentation by saying, I thought there was a lot of similarities between the mission of the Kauffman Foundation and the mission of Exaptive, and it's really embodied in this concept I just talked about, which is, at Exaptive we're trying to create these cognitive networks on the web in virtual environments, but the Kauffman Foundation has already created a cognitive network through this meeting called 1 Million Cups. And I sort of encourage you guys to think about that and to think about how you participate in it. I know that I participate in helping give feedback on other people's presentations, and whenever I give someone feedback, one of the things I always ask them is, what's your ask in the 1 Million Cups presentation, right? Because it's a great opportunity to ask things of the audience that comes in. So I'll tell you, I'll tell you what my ask is. That's how I'll close. I've actually got 4 of them. So one of them is that I'm very passionate about this idea of facilitated innovation. And if anybody else is, I'd love to talk to you about it, because I only have so many puzzle pieces in my head, and I'd love to know what puzzle pieces other people have in their heads about it. The second thing I'd ask is that my company is growing, and it's always hard to hire and find new talent. And if you know somebody that you think would be an asset, please have them check out our website and get in touch with me. The third thing I'd ask is that, as you can tell from this presentation, I collect anecdotes about acceptation. And I love my zebrafish example, and I have a bunch of other ones. But one of the things I like about acceptation is almost everybody's experience some version of it. You don't have to be a scientist to have an aha moment in which you realize something applies in a way you didn't think. And I'd love to hear those stories, whether you tell me now, whether you send an email, something like that, as long as you recognize that I might want to appropriate it into my next presentation. And the last thing I'll ask, which is the most important one, is for you guys to think about what I'm talking about in terms of this cognitive network and 1 million cups. It's a fantastic turnout that we have today. We've done this relaunch to try and create this environment in a new way, and everyone has an opportunity to take part in that, and I'd love for you to think about how you do that, how you create the environment that generates the sort of innovation and ideation that we want to see come out of Oklahoma City. So thank you very much.
All right, we're going to open the floor up to questions now. So if anybody has any questions, start by raising your hand.
Forgive me, this might be kind of long. I wrote it down just so I don't forget. But if your vision for how innovation happens is through networks, doesn't that kind of create problems identifying who gets credit, especially as it starts to make money and those types of things? So how do you kind of reconcile?
Everything gets more complicated when money's involved. That's totally true. Yes, I think we have a societal issue we need to think through around idea generation. I think we've had a fairly simple model, and that model is sort of the lone genius. You know, we talk about Thomas Edison, and we have pictures of him as sort of the single genius in his lab. The truth is that Edison had a ton of people working in his lab, and he also had a bunch of people that he got inspiration from that were outside his lab and actually even competitors. And for them, your question was a really big deal, right? Because Edison got all the credit for the light bulb, and there's lots of people that contributed incremental pieces for that. So it is absolutely a problem that we spend a lot of time thinking about at Exaptive, that if we're creating a combinatorial system where the end product is the sum of lots of sort of micro contributions from different people, and we want that to be monetizable, then we recognize that there's a challenge in figuring out how everybody gets the credit and the money, you know. I think that this is the good problem to have. Right now we have the problem in the other direction, which is we have the problem that we have sort of single people or single companies that get all the credit for things, and we have to deal with the problems of the incremental contributors feeling left out. I'd rather have the problem of how we equitably divvy that up. And I guess the last piece I'll say on this is that, you know, I'm a technologist, but I think that frequently many innovations that change society are not gated by technology. They're gated by the societal processes that allow that to be used. So a concrete example is Napster. We know about Napster. Napster went out of business. We think about Napster as being shut down by the record labels. The reality is that Napster negotiated a deal with the courts and with the record labels that would allow them to stay in business. They simply were going to give royalties on a per song basis to the artists. That didn't work because the artists didn't want to get per song royalties. A lot of them had one-hit wonders, and they didn't want to just get paid for that song. They wanted to get paid for the album. So Napster ultimately failed, even though they had a solution, where a few years later, Apple came in and they succeeded, not because the technology had fundamentally changed, but because they were able to negotiate the contracts. You know, we're here in a law firm office, and I think that the legal contracts that are around using technology are really important to having things happen. So one of the things we're working on is the set of contracts around this idea of fractional IP that will allow people to think about IP ownership in some new ways. And it's not a solved problem, but I think it's actually a really important one to have a whole new collaborative economy. You've heard talk of a sharing economy through Airbnb and Zipcar, but I'm really interested, everyone in my company is interested in how we push that to a collaborative economy.
Gunnar?
You know, Dave, I like how you kind of compare what you do with 1 million cups. Now, I'll kind of, summarize a conversation I had recently with somebody, an entrepreneur. I talked about, why don't you, come on down, present at 1 million cups. He says, I'm not really interested in just another pitching event. I'm not sure I have time for that. And so, if you were me, kind of, trying to say, think about it a little bit differently, which is what you're saying in a lot of ways. How would you see
It's not-
one MC being different, in terms of a typical pitching event?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is it's not a pitching event, and it shouldn't be a pitching event. And if we let it turn into a pitching event, we're doing a huge disservice to the community and to I think the whole reason the Kauffman Foundation started it. I was talking about the myth of the lone genius, how we have this sort of perception in society about where ideas come from. I think we also have a perception about entrepreneurship that's embodied in things like Shark Tank and all of this other, where entrepreneurship is about the pitch, to people that are going to be gruelingly tough on the pitchers, If you're an entrepreneur and you want pitching practice, there are plenty of ways to get it. In general, investors, VCs, angels, they love to hear pitches. It doesn't have to be a great pitch. It's their job to sort of calibrate. So in general, they will listen to lots and lots of pitches, and you shouldn't be scared, in my experience, to take those sort of turns at bat, even if you're going to strike out. I think 1 Million Cups is not about that. If people are coming up here and they're just getting pitch practice, don't get me wrong, I think that can be valuable. But if they're just getting pitch practice, that's of tremendous use to the person who's pitching, but it's not of tremendous use to the broader audience. So, what I would say is every venture, every entrepreneur is in a different stage of their business. There was a time where I needed pitch, that's what I was consumed with pitching. But now I have funding, I'm growing my company, there's a whole host of other issues that I'm interested in, and a whole host of other ideas I'm thinking about. And I would really encourage people who are thinking about presenting to think outside the box of the standard pitch, and to think about the ideas they want to share, the challenges they're having, the questions, the conversation. Maybe the best way is to think about what sort of conversation do you want to facilitate in this group that's going to add sustenance to everybody involved. So I really encourage that.
I'm one of the organizers of 1 Million Cups, and you mentioned that we had a great turnout. And thank you so much for everyone for coming. It is a great turnout, and we're very, very excited about this. What do you think is part of your success, part of this success for people to come? How does it mutually benefit each other in the ecosystem of entrepreneurship?
Well, I think some of it goes back to the earlier question, which is I think, some people that have turned up here, I think they know that it wasn't just going to be a pitch, and that there's going to be some ideas exchanged. And I think, this idea extends into business adage as well, which is content is king, and I really think that one of the ways to guarantee the success of this group, for all of us, both the people giving presentations and the people participating, and listening, is to think about what content we have to offer, and the fact that this is supposed to be a safe space, right? This is supposed to be a place where we're all sort of in the same boat in one way or another, and there's no wrong answers. So I think the success here is being able to think about the content, and then. In terms of how it helps entrepreneurs that are trying to be successful, I think one of the things that's helped me is just getting up and giving presentations like this and helping to get my message out. And I've had a bit of practice with it now, but earlier it can be very demoralizing, right? Because your message doesn't always resonate with other people. And I think that our ego really gets in the way of learning everything we can learn from these sorts of opportunities. So I think one of the keys in success is sort of putting the ego aside, taking your best turn at bat with whatever message is important to you at that time, and then really listening to the feedback you get and not being afraid to change it. What? I actually want to add something to that because I completely agree with that. And I would sort of extend it as well, which is I would say, in my experience, lots of the really, really valuable help that I get about being a CEO or a founder of a company doesn't always come from another CEO or founder of a company. One of the things I'm sort of amazed by is the overwhelming amount of minutia that is critically important. I mean, it's almost not fair to call it minutia. It's critically important to running a business, and you just don't know what you don't know. And I mean, I'll give you a very concrete example. My previous company was a manufacturing company, and we had bi-weekly pay cycles. People got paid every 2 weeks. And everywhere I've worked, I've always gotten paid every 2 weeks. And I never thought about why. And when I started Exaptive, I filled out this paychecks thing. We had to set up payroll, and it was like lots of choices. And I said, well, I'll get paid every 2 weeks. That's what I'm used to. Getting paid every 2 weeks, if you're running a company and you're paying your employees every 2 weeks, it's a disaster for budgeting because every quarter you get this weird spike where there's 3 pay periods, and it just screws everything up, right? And that what you really want to do is you really want to go to semi-monthly where you get paid twice a month, and then the budgeting point of view is completely smooth. And the only reason people don't do semi-monthly is if they have hourly employees. As soon as you have hourly employees, you can't really do that because you can't pay somebody in the middle of a week, like on the 15th or something like that, right? I had no idea. I learned this literally like 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we've been running my company for years, dealing with the fact that we have to make these annoying financial, offsets in our budgeting. When there was an answer that anybody who was a finance person in any way, to John's point, either a CEO who'd been there before, but it could be a non-CEO who's just an accountant or somebody that said, oh, let me tell you, do you have hourly employees? No, do semi-monthly. It'll save you headaches. And that's I would say when you think of if you know people that maybe don't want to come to 1 Million Cups because they don't feel they have anything to offer, they have no idea the information in their head that could be immensely valuable to another entrepreneur. It seems simple to them. Literally that could have saved me years of budgeting headaches. So,
All right, we got time for one more question. All right, go for it.
How does the cognitive network's ability to generate ideas compete with the relentless progression of AI and machine learning?
Oh, this is a great question. I'm glad we're ending on this. I think that we have this really interesting spectrum when it comes to thinking about humans and computers. On one end of the spectrum, we have things, sort of creative pursuits, where we tend to think that there's no place for computers, writing poetry or painting or things like this. On the other end of the spectrum, and this is sort of the relentless pursuit of AI, on the other end of the spectrum, we are increasingly generating areas where there's no room for humans. Millisecond stock market trading, it's even faster than millisecond trading now. There's no room for a human stockbroker in that equation. And I think you're absolutely right that there is a force, a technological force, that's moving more and more in that direction. Radiology is another good example. We can use machine vision now in a lot of cases to replace radiologists and to be able to look at things in ways they might not see. So there's these two forces. What I'm particularly interested in is the middle area. I think even as much as we push AI further and further towards being able to automate certain types of tasks, I think there is a very large spectrum around which it would be a mistake to take out the human. And a lot of innovative solutions are really derived through some form of creative thought. That's part of what exaptation is. Humor is a form of exaptation. That's usually why things are funny. You realize something applied in a different way. And computers are really bad at getting jokes, right? So I think, I don't see a problem in this particular type of innovation that I'm focused on with humans and computers getting along. In fact, I think it's a really exciting area to think about not how we create artificial intelligence, but how we create augmented intelligence. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, I want to take a quick moment to kind of recognize and thank some of our organizers. If you're an organizer for 1 Million Cups, can you please either raise your hand or stand up for a second? Okay, I take it back, stand up. All right, everybody, if we give them a quick round of applause. Also, Julia and Doug, I see Doug back here. Is Julie here? Oh, sorry, Julie. If we could give them a round of applause for offering us this great facility here at Dunlap Cotting. And one more time, if you're new, please put your hands up. If this is your first time here. All right, I kind of forgot. No round of applause after that. All right, I kind of forgot to tell you what exactly 1 Million Cups is. And 1 Million Cups, we're a weekly educational program. We're going to be holding it right here every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. So please try to make it if you can. And like I said at the beginning, please bring somebody with you. All right, next up is Mr. Erlen Bach, if you want to kind of come on up. Erlen is, like we said earlier, he's all the way from Norway to come here today to talk about outsourcing and how it's important for your business. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Erlen, and let's hear what he has to say.
Thank you, thank you. Just going to get set up here really quick. I've been told I have 6 minutes, so it's going to be time starting now. So how many entrepreneurs are in the room? Put your hand up. Okay. Fantastic. It's great to be here in Oklahoma. Happy New Year, by the way. And I'm here because I reached out to Ron Harris. Ron, are you here in the room? There we go. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. Really appreciate that. So, how many of you don't have enough time in what you do? Okay, put your hand up, great. How many of you guys have embarrassingly long to-do lists? Okay, great. Well, I'm also one of them still. I think I have 169 things on my to-do list on my iPhone. It's more like a brain dump than it is something I'm actually going to do. Because I actually only have one thing on my to-do list every day, which is typically the most difficult thing that I'm scared of doing. I'll typically do that thing first, and then I'll go on and do the very important things on my to-do list. How many of you guys want to have more employees, but you can't afford to hire them in the United States? So a lot of people think outsourcing is bad for the United States. I'm here to argue that it's actually a good thing. But first I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been an entrepreneur since 2007, and in 2010 I found myself on an underground train in London during rush hour, and my heart was beating at 200 beats a minute. I'm not sure it was 200 beats a minute because I didn't have an Apple Watch yet, but it was beating too fast, and my hands were turning blue. And later on in the hospital, my doctor said, "Oh, it wasn't a heart attack. You know, you were how old was I then? 29. It was just a panic attack." And the reason for that was because I'd been pushing myself too hard for too long. And he said, "Okay, Erlen, you got to actually take some time off and not work." Hence the book, Never Work Again. But what I did then was that I had started outsourcing a lot of my tasks to the Philippines, but I hadn't been able to let go of them properly. So I hadn't been able to trust people to actually do a lot of my tasks. So I found myself in this situation where I actually had to let go of my tasks, and I had to systematize and delegate and leverage other people's time so that I could focus on the higher income generating strategies in my business. And I found that this is actually the biggest paradigm shift for any entrepreneur, to go from a solopreneur or a business operator to moving up to sort of what I call the fourth level entrepreneurship, which is becoming a business owner. And luckily enough, I had pushed myself into a place where I had to start delegating. So I took about 3 months off. I put some procedures in place, and I actually came here to Oklahoma to heal. And funnily enough, my company actually functioned well without me. In many ways, it functioned better without me. Has anybody else had that experience, that somebody else is better at doing something that you used to do? Because it's funny, because when it comes to so many things in our life, we outsource it. So if you have a pain in your tooth, do you go on YouTube and Google it and then you fix it yourself? But for some crazy reason, when it comes to our own business, we go, oh, I should be doing that myself. So I have a big post-it note next to my desk which says, note to self, don't do this yourself. Right? And it's actually really difficult. It is incredibly difficult because the difficult thing is figuring out how does 5 minutes add up? So my brother's girlfriend has been driving a friend home from work every single day because she wants to save money. And it takes her 10 minutes twice a day. That's 20 minutes. That's about 2 weeks a year she's now spending on driving her friend home after work. It's important to make these calculations because little minute things matter. And as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, you shouldn't actually be doing that many things. In fact, a really good CEO has a lot of time because he's empowered other people to do the tasks for him. So I'm here actually to talk about Mr. Outsource. Mr. Outsource is an outsourcing company in the Philippines. So after I freed myself, I traveled the world for 4 years, living the sort of what I call the freedom lifestyle. And then in 2013, I decided to start a company to help liberate entrepreneurs. I wanted to teach, train, and help entrepreneurs how to start outsourcing to the Philippines. Basically, I was successful at it. So I wrote a best-selling book called Never Work Again. And it became my passion project to help other entrepreneurs because I didn't want other entrepreneurs to be in the same situation I was, panicking, not sleeping, super stressed, taking sleeping pills to sleep. It's not really a good situation to be in. So it's been my passion project for the past 2 years. Now, I'm actually here because we're challenged in that business. I know you're meant to oftentimes do what you love, and that's also, a lot of gurus talk about that. And that's actually what my book is about as well. Never Work Again isn't about not working. It's about doing what you love every single day. So what we do in Mr. Outsource is that we do an audit of your business, and then we will figure out how we can help you through outsourcing. Now, the problem with that is that we charge a one-off fee of $497, and we train and recruit the ideal person for you. And we also offer them a space in our co-working space in the Philippines, Davao City in the Philippines. The problem with that is that we have a lot of one-off sales. And in business, I really enjoy recurring revenue because I don't want every day to get up and say, oh, now I need to go out and chase new sales. I like having the same customers every single day. So we changed our business model around. So now it's $497 for recruitment, and then now we charge a management fee of 30% on top of that. Another challenge that we've had, which other companies have been successful at, is that they've chosen a specific area. So they said, oh, we're going to be doing data mining, or we only do web design, or we only do transcriptions. We haven't really taken that approach. We've sort of said the approach that, oh, we train talent, we can find talent, we have a big talent pool, and we can find anyone for you. And that's been a big challenge for us. Our most successful client so far is actually an accounting firm. His name is Matthew Brown. He works out of Australia, and he has a team of 6 people working out of our co-working space, and basically he's managed to create a much more effective accounting firm on the basis of outsourcing. The problem with that is that we charge $500 for the recruitment and then nothing after that. We make money on the co-working space, but that's not really a large amount of money. So at this point, we're turning over about between $7,000 and $10,000 recurring revenue on recurring clients, which is great. However, for me, it's turned out more into a charity. So I have these 2 other companies that generate money, but this business is my charity business, and I do need it to make money. So I'm actually here today to get some help from you guys in figuring out how do I make money on a service that is a cost-saving product, because it's really about cost saving and efficiency, right? So when you sell a cost-saving product, how do you actually have good profit in it? So I started it to help entrepreneurs. We've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs, but we're not really making the kind of money that we need to be making. We make a small profit, $500, $1,000 a month, but that isn't enough to pay me myself a salary. So that's what I need help with here today. So I'll just open up for the floor.
All right, so questions. Gunnar?
Well, actually input, since you're asking the question. You know, oftentimes you hear entrepreneurs say that they start out trying to do everything. And ultimately when they niche down and get into a specific area is when they can really be successful and be known for something. And you know, right now you're catering to the entire world with all the services. It's quite possible that if you were batching your people together in the Philippines, you could leverage them for more than one client and, you know, service multiple clients within the same segment and then, you know, expand segments over time.
Absolutely.
I think back off of Gunnar too. One of the things I see with trouble with entrepreneurs is they don't understand social media and they start getting, I'm just as guilty of start doing social media, you get so involved and that becomes a nightmare because you have all kinds of profiles you got to manage and entrepreneurs don't understand it. They don't realize that they can outsource to someone else much cheaper. So that could be a niche for you as well. That may be social media, which is a big trouble for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Joseph?
To Exapt, an idea that another company uses in a completely different industry. There's a company that builds software for large buildings. And what they do is they go in and say, we're going to save you a ton of money on your heating and your energy and your lights and HVAC and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to install a bunch of sensors all over your building, and this is going to automatically turn on and off lights, it's going to turn on and off AC units, all this kind of stuff. And we're not going to charge you anything for this. We're going to give you all the stuff for free. We're going to give you software for free. What we're going to do is we're going to take your last 12 months bills, and then we're going to take a monthly calculation of what you're going to do moving forward, and then we're going to take 25% of whatever you save. So you're saying, how do I make a cost-saving business profitable? Well, you find out how much are you going to save those clients, and then you take a piece of that. So they're still saving money. They're still going to be paying less. It's just going to be, 25% more than what they would otherwise. So
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. I'm working on a mobile app, and I tried to outsource everything. And initially, I thought that it's going to be only developing the app, like coding it. And I did outsource that. But after that, I figured out, okay, when you get done with the app, you have to do marketing. And that's a huge part of the development and being successful. So, but the marketing should be in the United States, and probably you're going to need some people at specific locations. What solutions do you have for that? Or if there is any solutions?
In terms of outsourcing, what we do, so I have a business podcast called Hardcore MBA. And when it comes to outsourcing to countries like the Philippines, the task needs to be a repetitive task. So when you say, oh, I'm going to develop an app, that's a project-based task. What I focus on outsourcing to my own people, for myself, is always repetitive tasks. Because then it's easier to, you can justify the time to make the instruction video, the screen capture, the manual on how you do that process. So what you could have done in that case would have been to do some data mining and then have a template email that goes out to all the different people that work on apps or have a blog or similar. So that would have cost you probably $500 a month to have a full-time virtual assistant do that for you. That's high end. Like, you can pay less in the Philippines, but you also get what you pay for, obviously.
So just kind of thinking off the cuff here, when you boil down what problem are you actually solving, it's not just outsourcing, right? Because you can outsource onshore, you can outsource offshore. And so your expertise is around sourcing talent in the Philippines, which is difficult for a lot of people that haven't been to the Philippines or haven't outsourced offshore, in terms of getting over that barrier of trust that the talent is actually worthwhile, worth paying for, and the quality of the work will be there. So then you have to tackle, once you understand what problem you're actually solving, it's not enough to match that talent with a problem here in the United States. You need a source of recurring revenue, right? Because consulting fees are not a great way to build a business. It's a difficult way to build a business. So I would look at models like Greenhouse or companies that do consulting, like HR type companies that recruit talent, or brokers for insurance. You've seen a lot of companies build workflow solutions like Greenhouse, like Guild, so that the consulting is more sticky, so that all the project-based work is within a workflow solution, and that's what people are actually paying a recurring revenue fee for, is that workflow solution, and what they're coming to you for is that expertise around sourcing, offshore talent in the Philippines.
My other business is a image editing 3D visualization company. We work with real estate companies in Norway. And basically what we do there is we become part of their business process and their business processing. And that is probably what I should have done with this business. However, 2 years ago, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna save the entrepreneur and liberate them and give them these great tools and access to this great team. The problem is that it doesn't work, and we should probably go more towards business processing, but that changes the business from I find that difficult when you
got the talent.
Yeah, we do have the talent.
I mean, you should be able to find the developers to build that workflow solution for you, right? I mean, that's what you tell this audience, is that's your expertise.
Yes.
Not to be contrarian, but is this a business you should double down on? You have 6, 7 businesses going at the same time. Is this the business that is not successful that you should be trying to make successful, or should you shut it down and focus on something where you can make more money doing something else?
Yes, that's always the. But here's the conundrum. I'm sure that's if there's lots of entrepreneurs out here, when you have a passion for something, and last year I shut down we did a 360 photography app for iPhones, Android, where you could photograph yourself in 3D. You could photograph any product, a car, even a property. And we had 480,000 downloads. We had 50,000 page views a month, and we couldn't find a way to make money. But it was a fun project. I poured a lot of money into it. And then eventually we shut it down. So I find it really difficult to know when to shut things down, because sometimes it's just going to a winery and seeing a press, and then you're like, oh, this is how you do it. And a part of me is always, kind of like, because I was watching my nephew yesterday. He's learning push-ups. So basically, he's like 9 weeks old, and he's like getting up on his arms now, and he's like working with his legs, and a big part of it is like grunting and crying, and and it's kind of like when you start a business, it's like you have that phase, it's like, and every day you just get up and you try to do a couple more push-ups, and yeah, you cry and you scream, but at one point you're going to do 100 push-ups, So I find it, I'm not good enough at killing my own businesses. I'm not 100% where that comes from. Maybe you guys have something to say about that?
There's a great author by the name of Cal Newport, teaches computer science at Georgetown, and his big theme is that following your passion is generally a very poor idea, unless it's a very rare and valuable passion that people are willing to pay money for.
Yeah.
If you never make money at this passion for the next 5 to 10 years, will you continue to do it for 5 to 10 years?
Well, we are making money. So I make money when I go on stage and I sell outsourcing. So is anybody familiar with like TR Vecker, information marketing world, sort of, make money online stuff? Okay. Well, when I do that stuff, I can make a lot of money. But the business, and it's important for me that the business itself is a self-generating entity that works without me. And at this point, yeah, it is that, but I'm not taking money out, which is, and it's crippled, basically.
Yeah, I kind of would always look at things pretty simply. It seems like to me, the model that you have, you're providing a service, obviously. And I look at a temporary employment agency model, when you think about that, to me, you should be making a percentage off of either the employees or the company on a per hourly basis. And that's pretty simple, whether it's 5%, 10%, whatever that number is, you plug that into a model, and it creates.
We did that about 6 months ago, and that's proving to work quite well. And we actually take 30%.
It's still not sticky though. I mean, the problem with that is that you can go between different service providers.
Yeah.
Right? So what's sticky is the workflow solution. And that's why Greenhouse, that's why Salesforce, that's why, you know, a lot of those companies are not just making money through the software. At the end of the software, there's a service. It's we'll broker your insurance, or we'll handle your payroll, or we're all recruiting talent for you.
What would you think would be the ideal process to figure out the ideal niche thing to sell?
Whatever pays the most amount of money.
Fair enough.
We have one more question. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the one that you shut down, that you said that had a bunch of, that you have to shut down, when was it, just a minute ago?
Oh, well, right now we're not losing money, so.
So, you know, now in the age of social media, you know, the product really is not any product about people, right? We are the product. They put Facebook there, all these things that we go in there, but we actually the product. Because and then all these companies want to be there because that's what we are. So if you got a website, you have a bunch of people there, the people is the product. So you can talk to other companies and say, look, I got 50,000 people here, do you want to put your product here so they can see it? So it's actually looking, what is the product? It's literally the people, the followers you have gained to that. That way you can put that, let's say, to Coca-Cola. You're going to say, well, I wanted to put this product to $50,000. So the product is people, not so much any other product. That's why Facebook is so successful, because he has billions of people there. We have become the product. You know? Not so much the products, because they don't sell anything. We are, so I mean, if you have something like that, look into that.
So are you saying that we need to feature our people in a...
The numbers, all about the numbers, the people that is looking at your stuff, you know, no matter what it is that you can say, look, I got 100,000 people on this page or whatever, that Coca-Cola or McDonald's wants to target those people. Tell us what you want, you know, that literally all the information is there. You want the 18 to 25, there they are. You know, what do you want to put in front of them? Well, on this page, you know? So it's literally, it's people's product.
Right, so what you're saying is create a website where you feature the people and you sell access to that to...
Yeah, you can sell that to the companies. Look, I got 100,000 people here on this website. And, you know, if you want to feature your product, whichever it is, you know, like, if you want to put your car there, or these new product, tell us, you know, and we can reach out to them, age, education, whatever. That's what Facebook does. Literally, we are the product. You know, it's billions of us there. And you can see the ads everywhere, you know, because that's where we are. So we literally is the product itself, not so much anything else, you know. So those are good numbers to present to a company.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Just before we close, I just wanted to say I am the presenter recruiter. And if you know someone, if you think of someone, if you yourself would like to present at 1 Million Cups, you need to go into the Facebook page and apply. If you will hand me a business card and say you're interested in presenting, then I will have a conversation with you and kind of prep you. So one of the things that we're doing is we're going to be trying to fill up our calendar for the next at least 6 to 8 weeks out in advance. So if you would please keep that in mind, and that will keep our attendance and our presenters very active and very engaging. So just put that little plug out there.
All right, and as a 1 Million Cups community, what can we do to help you?
What can you do? I think this has been really, really helpful right now. Just getting feedback from you guys and hearing other people's perspective on what you guys need and what you think is important in terms of what I explained. So I think it's been really helpful. And I'm really grateful to the organizers. And it's great that you guys are doing this. I was actually thinking about this concept yesterday and thinking, because I live in London, I was saying, oh, maybe this is something we can bring to London. Maybe it's already in London. So I think it's a good format because there are so many places you can go and pitch, but not so often a place where a lonely CEO can go and share openly with other people about what they do. So I think the format is really, really cool. And I appreciate being here.
What literally brought you to policy?
My brother, he works here at OU. So I was here for Christmas, and I come here about twice a year, once a year. So I spoke at OU last time I was here for the Enterprise Business School on how to start a business, and yeah, it's just fun to reach out to fellow entrepreneurs when you're in town, you know. Yes, tonight I'm going to be giving a workshop on how you can utilize outsourcing in your business, tools and techniques, strategies for how entrepreneurs that want to keep everything close to their chest can start delegating task by task and free up your time. So that's what I've done that successfully in 2 companies, and hence also the reason why I created this business. And we have helped hundreds of entrepreneurs. Like, we have done it as a charity. We've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs. So it is here at 7 o'clock. It'll be about... Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Today. Same place, right back here.
7 o'clock tonight.